go through the future and imagining that this is now happening. How do you respond? In fact, we'll be doing one at the beginning of May as a next step, in a sense. And that fitted also quite nicely to what Lena was saying about this 24 shocking hours. So when she came out with this, I said, well, yeah, we're not doing it with X events. We're not saying here is something extreme that happened. We're just saying this is how your current environment might evolve over time. Competitor X does this, new product appears on market, one segment is regulated heavily, things that you can imagine appearing when you go through. In terms of the other things we do, I should also maybe just mention, a lot of this I've been talking about is we go and fish with the client. It's always, I'm not a strategy consultant who goes and says, I've got the better brains than you, we're now going to do this. It's the collaborative workshop interview based. The client is the expert, I'm just the method guy, okay? A lot of what I also encourage, and which we certainly last year with a lot of our business, was actually teaching people to fish. We don't do it. We say, look, this is the way you do it. Let me help you set up your machinery so you can do it. So Lena and I didn't by accident meet in Singapore because Singapore has, for a long time, supported innovative thinking in various ways, or sometimes and sometimes not. It has a great interest in doing these things, and it's no surprise that we bumped into each other because I was helping them train what they were going to be doing in terms of activities using the RAS tools, the risk assessment and horizon scanning tools. Other customers just, I think, might be of interest. OECD, I see something appearing suddenly. We've mentioned the OECD a couple of times. Interestingly, from our client point of view, the OECD, it's the customer is doing with knowledge sharing. Not strategy, not futures, although we did work with Angela in January. It's actually a lot about how do you get an organization to share the best way of dealing with things and to learn from their customers. And for the OECD, this is a big thing. You have to learn, not just say we have the best knowledge and we're telling you what to do. Now we have to learn from your experience in this matter. And the other dimension, I guess, that goes with it is that the customers are, sorry, I'm just looking at the screen here. The other dimension that goes with it, we are working with the World Bank, and we're also working with something called the GIZ, the German Development Corporation, which means that we have projects in Brazil. We just got back from Brazil. We've been in Washington, D.C. quite often, as we almost missed each other at one time. In Georgia, in Algeria, in Tunisia. Where else have we been this year? That's just this year, okay? So we have a lot of imprint in lots of different places. I think that's also something that Lena liked when it came to talking about it. Not to mention corporate clients such as AkzoNobel, which is a chemicals company. Do you know these ladies who sometimes walk around the lobbies of hotels? I will do the due diligence of walking around sort of showing you various things. Let's turn off the projector because that's why it's just going to sort of cast light on us here. You can see a bunch of boxes on a screen, correct? Those different boxes on the screen are different steps in a process, okay? So when you're going through a problem, you're dealing with it in different steps. And right at the beginning, you start with expectations and you say, where is your goals? Where are you trying to get to? What is the situation? What are the key decisions, etc. One of the projects I did before actually meeting Lena was precisely on how one could actually see if we could use what I called wildcards at the time, not X events, but in principle, similar logic, extreme events that have a great impact and are low probability. How could they affect the strategy of a particular organization that was being worked on? Let me just open up the strategy. I'm just going to click, for those of you who can want to see, a little bit like a hyperlink. I presume many of you know what morphological analysis is. How many, can I just have hands up? How many know what morphological analysis is? Half. Okay, not good enough that I can kind of assume all of you do. Okay, in this particular context, the strategy is built on different pillars. How the pillars are, you can see each of this, there's a lot of grey boxes there. Yeah, 4 grey boxes. Each grey box is a key decision the organization has to take. When you go to your clients, they'll tell you, do we build a new factory in China? Do we transport it all by ship? Do we sack the CEO and whatever it is? Those are the key decisions we have to take, okay? Now, it's a little bit more complex than that, but that's the principle. You have 4 key decision areas. The yellow boxes that you see underneath are then the different alternative options I have for dealing with that problem. either I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. And what you're trying to then find is, it might be that this is the responsibility of marketing, and that this second column is the responsibility of production. And if marketing was left on its own, it would optimally just choose this one because that's the easiest one for marketing. And the production would prefer just to do this one because it's easier for production. But actually, those two don't go together. And so what you try and find out is the combination of options that works well together. And that's what you're looking for in this particular context. So this was actually education, but you can imagine that you're looking for alternative combinations which are then alternative possible plausible strategies. I won't go into how exactly it's done, but one strategy was indeed, as you can see here in this context, just straight across the top. We do that, we do that, we do that, we do that, where it's now gone blue. Okay? That's one possible set of one strategy. Another one, which is also coherent, can make sense that you do it at the same time as we do that particular combination. And a third one would have been that we could have done that particular combination. Okay, so very nice. I've now got various boxes. In other words, various ways I could take the decision. I could do this, this, and this, or I could invest in that, that, and that, or I could go over the top of the table and run straight to the door. Yeah? Those are different options I have. Now, that, unfortunately, for many clients is just where they want to get to, and then they say, right, tell me what my objectives are, and I'll tell you which is the best strategy. And I kind of go, that's annoying, because guys, you haven't thought about the outside world yet. What about if the world out there does something that you hadn't thought about? Okay, well, that's where you get to the wildcard test, potentially. In this particular context, we came up, it was an education issue, remember? We came up with three different things. Actually, I can even zoom it up quite large so people can read maybe even the text slightly. What happens if it's outside of your control as an education ministry, as a result of economic crisis, your budget is slashed by 30%? Now, it's kind of, oh my God, it's not in our control. It might be in the control of the government, but not in our control, our little bit of the government. Or what if everybody goes on strike? Huh? Or what if, what was the other one? Natural disaster, the earthquake strikes and the schools in October. Yeah? What do we do? Okay, then the question was, for the different three strategies we have, you remember there were three different combinations of options. Which of these does well if that happens? This is a multi-criterion assessment. In other words, I look at this strategy and say, it consists of doing this, this, and this. If there is a 30% cut in budget, am I really up the creek without a paddle? Or can I do something about it? And actually, it's an okay strategy, I could still survive. And you rank, all you're doing is ranking which of these strategies performs better against that criteria. Okay? So you can give in a score which goes from -10 to +10. The point is you do it for the three in this case. We only chose wildcards. I hadn't heard of 7 shocks yet. Yeah, don't worry. And we came up with the conclusion, actually the green strategy, all it's doing is combining the scores from the individual columns together into one, is actually the more, in this case I would say robust, I'll come back to that, strategy. Okay? So it's just simply a means, if you like, in a visual manner of quickly putting things together. And a lot of time what I've been doing is building scenarios, strategies, goals, using these tools in a different manner. What attracted me was the notion of precisely systematizing what we were doing here, because here the idea is we kind of give in numbers like that. You guys, with your method, you have a much more solid basis for being able to judge what the numbers should be. Because if we do this and this in the strategy, it implies the following actions, which are or are not, according to your system of colours from yesterday, robust or not robust. So there would be a foundation that would be a much more solid foundation for just doing this. Okay, that was one of the connections I was making immediately. Alternative wildcards that could happen. And I said, for your organisation, how vulnerable are you to this shock? So the same thing that was done before it was the strategies were down here, and we were saying how would they perform against the different wildcards. Here, the wildcards are down here. And we're saying if this wildcard occurred, how, for instance, vulnerable would you be if that wildcard occurred? They give in scores, again, from -10 to +10, relative scores. And what you can come up with is then which are the wildcards, which are the ones to which we should pay the most attention. So in this case, the red one is the one that wins. Definitely, we have to pay attention. If that red one happens, for us, for our position where we are, that's the more important one. Now, if I was trying to go through and find the 7 shocks that, from the list of 40, I would probably do it in something like that. Because it allows me not just to go, I think, but to use criteria to evaluate which of the shocks are the ones that we want to really focus on. Okay, that's just a minor kind of, it was something I did for a totally different, well, no, for wildcard purposes, but nothing to do with X events, shall we say. And that was in 2005 or something. Okay, that's all I wanted to show from IDOS point of view. It's just a tool set, just so as you've got an idea, of 11 tools. I've only shown 2 tools, really, which can be used for different purposes, like a carpenter set. No, this was developed in 1992 by a German, Albrecht von Müller, who has a foundation in Munich, and the foundation is called Parmenides, and the Parmenides Foundation is focused on thinking in complexity. There are 6 permanent researchers, there are 50 temporary faculty who are floating around the world, and they get together people who are dealing with how you think and how humans deal with complexity. The last thing I just wanted to sort of provoke you with, and I think I have to come closer here, is you can see I've done a Venn diagram. And the Venn diagram kind of reflects my understanding or my thinking about resilience and robustness. It's a provocation, nothing more. You can see I have robustness within resilience. In other words, everything that is resilient must have robustness in there. But robustness is not the whole of resilience. And I use, as the analogy, your car windshield. You know, at the front of the car, the glass. We have tried increasingly to make it harder and tougher and more resistant. So if a small stone bumps, it bounces off. That's making it more robust. So it can resist the damage. If something comes, it won't be damaged. It will still carry on intact. However, resilience is something, it includes that robustness, but in addition. And the resilience is, what if the windscreen, despite all the robustness, breaks? How easy is it to take the windshield out, get another one, and put it in? And the problem is, sometimes, by making it so resistant and robust, it's bloody hard. You have to get special tools and you can't just do it. Sometimes, actually, the easier method is it's just a plastic rubber thing. You pull the rubber away, take it away, put another one, and that was it. And so sometimes you get the contrast or the contradiction between robustness and resilience. The resilience is the ability to reinstall or boot up again, in a sense. And that, I think, the car window for me is the indication. Until now, I've been focusing very much on robustness, making sure you don't get knocked out. You don't have to bring things up. But you also want to think about that extra piece of what if it does, how easy is it to change out? Okay? That's my final thought for the day.